All right, here we go. Prepare to get blasted all over the face or whatever or whatever other body part you prefer to be blasted over with John's top 10 list. Today's top 10 list, or this week's or month or quarter or year, depending on how long it takes us to get another one up. This top 10 list is my personal top 10 animated action cartoons. So I was thinking about doing just top 10 cartoons, but then I wanted to break it down a little bit more. I was thinking about doing kids cartoons as opposed to adult cartoons like South Park and Simpsons, but then that would include a whole lot. So I'm narrowing this down to just favorite cartoons, action-oriented cartoons. So you won't see any Looney Tunes or Animaniacs or things like that. This is all action, kick-ass action cartoons that you would watch as a kid. So let's start off with number 10. Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This is a cartoon that debuted back a few years ago in 2012 and only ran until 2013. It had about 2 seasons to it, coming off the heels of the very popular Avengers movie. It incorporated elements of the movie. They got a voice actor for Iron Man that tried to emulate Robert Downey Jr. to the best of his ability. But it was very faithful to the comic books. Had a lot of storylines throughout many eras of the comic books, and it involved the lineup of Iron Man, Cap, Thor, Giant / Ant-Man, which is a different version from the movie, had Wasp, and also the Hulk. I think that was the beginning roster, and he eventually added people like Black Panther, and God, who else? Mockingbird was around there. Black Widow wasn't really part of the team. She was kind of a double agent working for Hydra. That was kind of a cool thing. But it had a lot of cool storylines from the comic books, like I said. It helped kind of introduce people to the Guardians of the Galaxy before they became mega popular in their movie. This was kind of a jumpstart for that team, those characters, so people would kind of have them in their mind, which cartoons usually do a lot. But it had storylines, classic stuff from how Captain America was found, like the Avengers were formed before Captain America even joined the team. It had a cool build-up to the secret invasion. It added like little bit characters throughout the whole series. Winter Soldier, Red Hulk, not that they're really bit characters. Also included a new Avengers team, which brought on Spider-Man, Wolverine, Luke Cage, characters like that. So I think it ended before its time. Marvel decided to move in a new direction, so it more closely tied into some of their other cartoons, which I think was not such a great idea. But number 10, Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Number 9, X-Men Evolution. This was a strange concept back in the day. It's like taking the X-Men and the X-Men franchise, who I think the last cartoon they did was the animated series in the 90s. The series ran for about 3, almost 4 seasons. The last season was just a very short season that went from about the year 2000 to 2003. The concept was taking the X-Men and putting them in high school, which seems a little silly. They were being taught at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters by teachers Professor Xavier, Storm, and Wolverine. And it included a roster of Cyclops, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, Kitty Pryde, Rogue. God, who else was there? Spike, who was like a brand new character who was kind of a shit character, I thought. He didn't really go anywhere. I'm glad they kind of got rid of him at a certain point. They brought on Beast eventually throughout the series. At first, it seemed a little weird, but I really liked the animation. The voice acting was really done really well. It had a lot of voice actors, and I think the production was done by the people who did the cartoon Beast Wars, Transformers Beast Wars, which maybe you'll hear about a little bit later. So the voice acting was top-notch. At the beginning of the show, the villains were primarily the Brotherhood of Mutants, led by Mystique. It had Blob, Toad, Quicksilver, Avalanche, and eventually brought in Magneto, and then eventually finished off the series with Apocalypse. What's interesting about this series is that it introduced the character of X-23, which became kind of a major character in comics. Very few TV shows or cartoons actually originated a character as opposed to the comics. But this was one, and she is now has the current mantle of Wolverine in the comic books because Wolverine is dead, and X-23, just so you know, is a female teenager clone of Wolverine. So think of Wolverine, but as a, teenage girl. But she's kick-ass. She has 2 claws on each hand, plus one that comes out of her foot. I don't know how much sense that makes, but it's kind of awesome. She may or may not appear in the upcoming Wolverine movie, Old Man Logan. So stay tuned for that. But there you go. Number 9, X-Men Evolution. Number 8, Transformers. And I'm talking about Transformers, the original Transformers back in the 80s. This is a series that originated in Japan under the title of but it started in the year 1984 and went until about 1987. It had 2 seasons of the awesome kick-ass original characters, including Optimus Prime, Megatron, Starscream, and all those nameless Autobots that no one really remembers. Went for 2 seasons, captured the minds and imaginations of all who watched it, and then it had a 1986 animated movie, which any Transformers fan will tell you is the best, most awesome, the only worthwhile Transformers movie, although I do think the first Transformers live-action movie was not bad. That movie, spoiler alert, killed off many of the main characters, including Optimus Prime, Megatron, Starscream, and all those nameless Autobots that no one remembers, and introduced a brand new roster, probably having to do with toy sales. It's funny because that movie took place in the year 2005, but, it was set in the future at the time in 1986. After that movie, all the new characters in that movie took over the series for a season or 2 until about 1987, probably 1 season. But the original Transformers, it's a little lower on my list just because it is a little dated when you watch it. There are some shows back then that I can watch and love, and there's still some nostalgia factor. Don't get me wrong, but as a production standpoint, I only will sometimes watch it for the nostalgia factor. It doesn't have remember how awesome. I mean, that's a weird thing to say, and it's all about a matter of opinion. But anyways, because of the weird writing and production on some of the episodes, it's a little lower on my list, although it's a kick-ass cartoon and probably the biggest trendsetter of kick-ass action cartoons, along with G.I. Joe and some of those others. But there you go. Number 8, Transformers Generation 1. Number 7, Young Justice. This is a cartoon that kind of had another silly or weird premise, especially to loyalists, purists, even though I hate that term, kind of fans, where instead of focusing on the staples of the DC universe, including, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, it instead focused on their sidekicks. It was a team, started out with, Robin, Cyborg, Kid Flash, which was the, I think, Wally West version? Yes. And included Ms. Martian. I was never aware of her in the comics before this cartoon, so I'm sure people can tell me where she originated, if she originated in the comics. And then had Superboy. So it had those 5 characters as the main characters. It aired from the year 2011 to about 2013 when it was unceremoniously pulled/canceled from the time slots or whatever. Production was halted for whatever reasons. Pissed off a lot of people. And that show was really starting to get going. The first season was done well, had this weird mystery conspiracy that they were kind of hinting at for a long time, as most of the episodes were character development episodes. The end of the first season was extremely kick-ass and awesome. I don't want to spoil it for people. And then season 2, again, not wanting to spoil, but it took a way different direction, changed a lot of the characters in way awesome ways, while including a whole slew of new characters. I think the people who produced and made this cartoon also made other awesome cartoons like The Spectacular Spider-Man and Gargoyles, which you may or may not hear about on this list a little later. But Young Justice had a kick-ass voice cast, and it is currently available on Netflix, both seasons. So you guys should go watch that now and have a nice little treat. But there you go. Number 7, Young Justice. Number 6, Thundercats. Thundercats are on the move. Thundercats are loose. Feel the magic, hear the roar. Thundercats are loose. In case you couldn't guess, it's Thundercats, another 80s classic. This show ran from 1985 to 1989. Premise was this group of beings, alien, feline, humanoid species. I don't know, they was from another planet called Thundera. They were the last survivors of their planet. They came and landed on Third Earth, which is, I guess, an ancient Earth. I don't know. It's kind of fuzzy on the details, and maybe like in some kind of lore throughout all the episodes that maybe I missed that they explained a little bit better. Even though this is an 80s cartoon and sometimes production was a little silly, sometimes the concepts were a little weird, I think the production value on this was top-notch through a lot of it. It was just all-around kick-ass. I fell in love with it. I remember watching it as a kid, but then I rented the first few episodes on VHS, which was kind of like the pilot episodes. It was a movie. And it was just, I was blown away by the animation, the storylines, the voice acting was, 80s. But just the all-around originality and awesomeness of that show still has kept me a huge fan. My brother and I did a little fan comic involving He-Man, Thundercats, and Voltron, which, we can't really share too much because of copyright issues, but maybe we'll share some images here. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to, put it in print someday, but, those are pipe dreams. This show also, I have a Thundercats Sword of Omens replica sitting right next to me here because of this show. But Thundercats, number 6. Number 5, Gargoyles. This Disney animated cartoon, which is weird thinking it's Disney, was one of the most kick-ass things I've ever seen in my entire life, ran from about 1994 to 1997. It, again, voice casting was awesome. The main character, Goliath, was voiced by Keith David, who's been in a shitload of things. He voiced Spawn. He was in the movie They Live, where he beat the fuck out of Rowdy Piper. So go check out that fight. That movie, coincidentally, They Live, and the fight I'm talking about was the basis for the cripple fight in South Park. Anyways, Gargoyles. These they're what are they? They're mythical creatures, gargoyles who are stone by day, warriors by night. The sun goes down, they come out of they burst out of their shells or their stone shells and protect the city. It has a lot to do with time travel in a sense. It starts off in the medieval times, whatever years that were, 1,000 years before that. But it involves a lot of fantasy, sci-fi elements. A lot of the voice cast as well were done by Star Trek alumni. The villain Xanatos was voiced by Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker. Also, Marina Sirtis, who did Troy, did Demona. Michael Dorn, Worf, did, I want to say Stone Cold Steve Austin, but it was Cold Stone. Plus, you had Brent Spiner as Data doing some voices. Chief O'Brien, Lieutenant Uhura, Captain Janeway, all did voices on this show. I'm sure I'm missing some. But, again, the animation, the complicated storylines for being such a kids TV show was awesome. It I think changed people, like the producers or whoever was making it had to bail for some reason. Then they restructured it at a point called Gargoyles: The Goliath Chronicles, and then it just kind of took a turn for worse. Didn't last too long from there. I've heard rumors, and I'm hoping that this cartoon will turn into a live action movie, which would be so awesome to see on the big screen. So keep your fingers crossed for that. To watch this show, I think you can watch a lot of the episodes just on YouTube. So Google or type in Gargoyles TV series. Check out some of those awesome episodes. But there you go. Number 5, Gargoyles. Number 4, Beast Wars! You're like, what the fuck is Beast Wars? It's Transformers Beast Wars. And I may get a lot of shit for this by some people who've never seen the show, of like, how can you put Beast Wars above the regular Transformers? And I'm like, very easily. The animation on this was a weird time in history for animation, in its infancy stages. I forget the production company's name, but I'll look it up. Mainframe Entertainment, that's what it's called. They also did the TV show Reboot, which was even a little weirder concept, which I won't go into, and a little weird, stranger and silly animation. But the TV show, this show went from about 1996 to 1999. It followed the continuity of the Generation 1 Transformers timeline. At first, you didn't know what to make of this show. It was, instead of Autobots and Decepticons, it was Maximals and Predacons. You find out we're the ancestors of Autobots and Decepticons. It takes place years and years, hundreds, thousands, maybe years after the original TV show, and the Transformers are now a lot smaller. They're not as huge. They're about adult size, varying degrees, and they transform into animals, hence the name Beast Wars. Again, it was confusing as a kid because you had characters like Megatron and Optimus Primal. Instead of Optimus Prime, he turned into a gorilla. But then it kind of all made sense. Megatron took his name from the original Megatron. He is probably one of the best villains ever in a TV show, Megatron, just because of the voice acting and the way they wrote him. He was evil, he was sadistic, but he was funny as fuck, man. After the first season, they went a little bit more of a robotic look to them. They used to transform straight up to flesh and blood. Well, not blood, but on the outside it looked to be flesh and blood animals. But then they went into a more robotic mode, I think, because of the toys. The toys were awesome. As opposed to the old school Transformers, these toys looked exactly like they did from the cartoon and transformed in the exact same way. And I think they probably made the toys first and then modeled the characters after them, which kind of sucks. It went 3 seasons, all kick-ass. The first season was like historically like cartoons have been a longer season, double the episodes. It was probably like 30 episodes. The next two were about 15 each, somewhere around there. But then it was repackaged into a new show called Beast Machines, which was not nearly as good. I mean, it had kind of a cool concept, but it was weird, just not as well done. The animation wasn't as cool. They didn't transform. It was kind of morphed. It was weird and silly. But Beast Wars will go down as, I think, one of the best cartoons that is also the most underappreciated cartoons of all time. But there you go. Number 4, Beast Wars. Number 3, X-Men, the animated series. Finish it, guys. That's the thing about these cartoons that I've been going through. I can probably hum or sing like the theme songs, which you just don't get nowadays in cartoons. But set during the 90s, in fact, to be specific, debuted in 1992 and went till 1997, had several seasons to this show. I remember seeing this show and was blown away. Like, at that point, you didn't have a lot of awesome comic book cartoons. There was one that I'll be talking about a little bit later that was around that time, but X-Men was a Marvel property that kind of set the trend. I think X-Men has always done this, like with the cartoon, you had X-Men, and then you had the Spider-Man cartoon, then you branched out into others, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Avengers cartoons. Same thing happened with video games. You had the X-Men arcade game, and then it eventually went into Marvel Superheroes, Marvel vs. Capcom, blah, 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 blah. Same with movies. X-Men movie, Spider-Man movie, and now here we are today. So X-Men has always been a trendsetter. But I remember seeing the first pilot episodes, Night of the Sentinels. It had the 90s era characters, Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, Wolverine, of course, but then Gambit, Rogue, Beast, and Jubilee. It, over time, included other characters that never really officially joined the team, like Colossus, Nightcrawler, Angel/Archangel, had Cable, Bishop, had almost every X-Men character, and went through a bunch of awesome storylines. I think it was in the third season that it really hit its mark of the awesomeness that it could do when it did the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas. These cartoons were so faithful to the comic books that I had never read at the point, but my brother Robert had, and he was telling me scene for scene what was going to happen. Spoiler alert, during the Dark Phoenix saga, Gladiator and Rogue were fighting and punching each other. In the comic books, it was Gladiator and Colossus. But he was saying, like, oh my gosh, they're going to punch each other and the ceilings are going to crumble down on top of them, and Gladiator is going to come out pulling Rogue, and that is exactly what happened. That was kind of awesome. I would watch those episodes religiously, over and over, back to back, whenever I had the time to record them. And I think most people will think that this X-Men animated series has captured the 90s generation, the ones who were a little too young for the 80s Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats era. This was one of their main cartoons that they've ever watched and remember. Voice acting was great. Animation was great for the most part. You know, like all shows, it had its moments. Sometimes they recycled footage just because they had a hard time. At one point, they restructured that series too. The animation was a lot different and took a downturn and didn't last very long after that. But one thing that I do love is also the villains with the voice acting. Magneto was badass. Mr. Sinister was badass. Apocalypse was badass. All the voices were scary and intimidating and made you feel the threat of the villains, which I wish some of these newer movies had done. Number 3 was X-Men. Number 2, Justice League.
Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Two different names, but it's the same fucking show. There went three seasons of Justice League that went from 2001 until 2004, and then continued into Justice League Unlimited from 2004 till 2006. First three seasons were standard Justice League seasons and episodes. The first season was okay, to be honest. I wasn't too terribly impressed. It wasn't until I heard later how great it was, and then I rewatched it of how this show had progressed. The second season started to get more and more awesome, with some awesome season enders. Season finales, and really showcased how badass these characters were. It was in continuity with the Batman animated series and Superman animated series and the Batman Beyond TV show cartoon. But with Batman and Superman, they were joined by Wonder Woman, the Jon Stewart version of Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Wally West Flash, and Hawk Girl. Those were the main 7. They were slowly introducing characters throughout those seasons as well. Had some very awesome episodes, which brought back recurring characters from the TV shows. The voice acting, again, brought back all the main voice actors, except they changed Superman's voice. Tim Daly, who did the Superman cartoon, didn't want to do it for some reason. I don't know why. But they got another guy who I know from a bit role in the Friends TV show, not Super Friends. But those voices are now iconic to me, and I love it when they continue to do the voices in video games and directed to video movies. But it's not until Justice League Unlimited that it really took off storyline-wise. The other seasons were good, didn't have an overarching storyline. Not until Justice League Unlimited, where it had a secret organization that was out to destroy the Justice League and had several episodes leading up to that. It had one of my favorite episodes was Task Force X, which is another name for the Suicide Squad. They were had some of the same characters, but as opposed to this movie coming out, but mostly are different. But in this episode, they had to infiltrate the Justice League headquarters floating in space and steal something. But that was my first really main introduction to the Suicide Squad. It was a great episode, and there's some awesome Batman moments, some of the most kick-ass lines that he has ever done or said or had. So I highly recommend you check out Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. They should both be on Netflix right now, so go get them. So as a recap, here are my top 10 through 2. Number 10, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. 9, X-Men Evolution. 8, Transformers Generation 1. 7, Young Justice. 6, Thundercats. 5, Gargoyles. 4, Beast Wars Transformers. 3, X-Men Animated Series. 2, Justice League / Justice League Unlimited. And my number one favorite, most kick-ass, badass kids action cartoon of all time, you fucking guessed it, Batman the Animated Series. The show went from 1992 to 1995, and then it got repurposed into the Adventures of Batman and Robin. And then after that, the Superman animated series came about, and then they produced another season and restructured the show a little bit, changed the art style for the better or worse, who knows. But this is the show that kind of started it all for some of these kick-ass comic book cartoons. The voice acting, Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, were just so awesome, and they're continuing to do those voices today. There's a version of a classic Batman comic book, The Killing Joke, that is going to be coming out where those guys did the voices. It's getting great accolades, and it's going to be shown in some theaters, I think. They also did the Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie, which was released in theaters, which is one of the greatest Batman movies ever, I think, because it was a more adult version of this cartoon. It had some little hokey moments in it, but for the most part, it had a very serious tone and storyline. The show had all the classics that you remember, classic characters, Robin, Batgirl, Alfred, the villains, Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, whole bunch of others. And this show also introduced and created the character of Harley Quinn, who is going to be in the Suicide Squad, and everybody is in love with now and will know more and more as she becomes more popular. But the character of Harley Quinn was just supposed to be a random henchwoman for the Joker, but they enjoyed her and the voice actor so much that they kept making more and more stories, and some of the standout episodes were the storylines with Mr. Freeze, Heart of Ice, I think it's called. The first episodes involved Catwoman. The show came out around the same time that the Tim Burton Batman Returns movie came out, so it made sense to have Catwoman in there. One of my favorite episodes is the Almost Got Him episode, where all the different Batman villains were playing poker and talking about times that they almost got Batman, almost killed him. There was Joker, Penguin, Two-Face, Killer Croc, and Poison Ivy, and each story was a little bit different. It was so funny with the Killer Croc version, where everyone's stories and plans were very intricate of how they almost killed Batman, but Killer Croc's was just, he was on my tail and getting closer and closer until I threw a rock at him, and everyone was looking at him like how fucking stupid he was. Which is funny when you rewatch the episode after you finish it, because, spoiler alert, Killer Croc wasn't Killer Croc at all. That was Batman. He was infiltrating that group, because in Joker's story of how he almost got him, he ended up capturing Catwoman during that, and Batman was trying to find out where he had her, so he was listening in to find out where she was at. Batman saved Catwoman, and then great little moment with Catwoman and Batman on the roof, and they've always had this little flirtatious relationship, obviously, and she was going in for a kiss, but then hears something down below, like a police siren goes off, so her attention is diverted for just a moment, and of course Batman gets the fuck out of there, just because he's the goddamn Batman, and he's awesome, and he does things like that. I'm sure he wanted to get on that with Catwoman, but he disappeared, and she chuckles to herself and says, almost got him, which, that's how she almost got him. Guess she wants to bone him. But there you go, Batman the Animated Series. So that's my top 10 list, but I do want to give a notable, and I say notable very loosely because I actually totally forgot about this show. I'd probably put it somewhere right in the middle of my list, maybe at number 7, if I had remembered bumping Young Justice, Transformers, and X-Men Evolution down to the bottom and dropping Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Hero altogether. But this was Samurai Jack. I can't believe I totally forgot about this show. It's been a while since I'd seen it. It went from about 2001 till 2004, I think. Had so many great episodes. The fella who did it, Gendy Tartakovsky, I guess, he did the actual good Star Wars Clone Wars, not the CGI thing that I hear is good, but I tried to watch it. I couldn't get into it. But the 2D animation style that he used for Samurai Jack, he used for that Star Wars Clone Wars between episodes 2 and 3 before they came out, actually made the character of General Grievous scary and badass as opposed to that fucking movie. Anyways, Samurai Jack, he was a samurai from, ancient Japan, and got transported into the future to fight the demonic villain Aku. who always talked about Samurai Jack as a foolish samurai warrior. And then it was, I don't think I've ever watched all the episodes of that, and I wish they would put them all out on Netflix. They put out like the first season, which was a very few episodes, but didn't include a lot of the episodes that I loved. I'm going to talk about my favorite episode that I had ever seen, and I think I had only seen about like once or twice. I haven't really been able to find it again. I was watching it with my brother D, who's a big fan of the show, and we went fucking apeshit over this episode. It was kind of a slow-going episode at first, and only had Samurai Jack, the character, in it for very, like, maybe a minute, if at all. But the show had been on for a few seasons, and Samurai Jack was just such a badass. He could beat anybody, beat anything, never lost his cool. And the villain Aku needed to get rid of him. So these 5 bounty hunters were hired to take him down. And they met up in this cabin in the like the snowy wilderness, and each one kind of told a story about how badass they were, and each one just kept getting more badass and badass. So these characters were like some really like scary characters, and the main one was this kick-ass female character who was the most badass. She was a sword fighter. I don't remember exactly what their stories are, but the end is where shit got real. They made a plan to these bounty hunters to band together, split the money to take down Samurai Jack. And they had this plan that they told you what they were going to do exactly. And then the waiting came. And they were waiting for Samurai Jack to come to spring their trap. And the main bounty hunter, I don't know her name, she was kind of wasting time by slicing drops of water that was melting from icicles with her sword. That's how, like, kick-ass she was. She was just, a drop would come and she would slice the drop in half in that split second. Then Samurai Jack comes along and they spring their trap. And that trap goes off without a hitch. They don't do anything wrong. They execute it perfectly. But that's how badass... I use that word badass and kick-ass way too much, sorry. That's how awesome Samurai Jack is. It didn't matter what they did. He fought through and foiled their plan perfectly. They all came at him, did what they were supposed to do, and Samurai Jack expertly fought them off, kicked their ass. And when they sprang their trap, you see one of those drops of water fall. And by the time that he does away with all of them, that drop of water finally lands. So all that happened in that split second of the water dropping. The female bounty hunter, having had her ass kicked as well through all that, she just like is looking at Samurai Jack. His back is to her, and he's just waiting to see if she does anything else. And she knows that she is nowhere in his level, and she gives up. And Samurai Jack puts his sword in his sheath and continues walking. Doesn't even say a fucking word. And all that, he just walked through. These bounty hunters sprung their trap in a split second. He kicked all their ass and just kept on going. Me and my brother lost our shit of how awesome that was. I can't even describe it. I'll try and find some links or something, if maybe it's on YouTube, to show this. But that is one of the greatest moments of Samurai Jack. It's one of the greatest cartoons. I can't believe I forgot about it. But that's part of a notable or part of my top 10 list. So what did you think of my list? I know there's a lot of people who are big fans of Dragon Ball Z and Avatar the Airbender, Last Airbender, and that, show Korra something, I guess, is part of Last Airbender. Sorry, I'm not a big fan of those type of cartoons, but what else did I miss? What would you have put in there? Would you have rearranged, added some, removed some? Let me know in the comments what you think. So there's my top 10 list. All right. Well, I guess that'll be it. So you can find me on my various social media sites, which include Facebook, Norton Man Art and Comics, Instagram, which is Norton Man Art, and Twitter, which I don't do a lot on because Twitter is kind of weird. Like, I don't know, Twitter. I'll tweet, I guess. If I had more followers, maybe I'd tweet more. But anyways, NortonMan37 on Twitter. You can also find me on DeviantArt at Norton Man. And YouTube also. You can see some of my videos. Also Norton Man. YouTube? You can just Google Norton Man and you'd find a bunch of shit. And if you want to support my Kickstarter, go to Kickstarter.com, search for Bliss. It's Bliss number 2 currently.
All right, and you can follow me on Facebook at Jesse Roundy Artistry, Instagram at Jesse Roundy Artistry, and Jesse Roundy Art, like I mentioned earlier. I talked about that while you were gone. Yeah, I forgot about it. Twitter, Jesse_Roundy, and that's about it for now. There's getting to be too many social media sites. It's hard to keep track of them all.
I think if we just start Googling each other. Have you Googled yourself lately?
Yeah, it's pretty cool how much stuff comes up. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy. When you start just putting all this stuff online, it doesn't leave. It's all out there.
It's there forever. All right. Well, that's the end of our podcast. It's a fairly short podcast, just a little under an hour and 15 minutes. Usually we go 2.5 hours on these things.
Yeah, it's not bad, though.
You think we'd have more shit to talk about since we've been gone for so long.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, I guess I could go into deep about movies that I've seen, Batman vs. Superman. I might do another Batman vs. Superman review when the Blu-ray comes out, and I watch the 3-hour cut.
Oh, boy. 3 hours?
Yeah, dude.
How long was it in theaters? 2.5?
I think so. All right. Well, that's all. Thanks for listening, and make sure you come check us out next time. This is John Norton.
Wait. Do I have an out saying? I can't remember. It's been so long.
You could do that Star Wars.
I swear I came up with something. What was my last one?
I don't like your sign out thing.
No, not the spread some bits.
Spread some bits.
There was something else. What was the last one I did?
Was it the Star Wars one?
What was Star Wars?
The line from Star Wars that everybody knows in the entire world.
Luke, I am your father?
No. May the Force be with you.
I don't. What was it?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's a good one, but should I say it?
Roundy's still struggling to find his sign out line, so for now, so say we all.
Peace out.
Oh my God. May the Force be with you.
And may the Force be with you.
Yeah!
Well, that was cool.
Yeah, it was a great top 10 list. What did you think about it? What did you think of number 1?
Very helpful.
Shocking, or did it make sense?
This isn't going to make any sense to people listening. You better put something up now.
Okay.